Okay.
Any objection will be relativistic. And if it's relativistic, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, because you're ultimately applying to another standard to object to the way God has done what he's done, right? But his actions are ultimately justified because God is the arbiter of what is good and what is not good.
Yeah, and if anyone doubts the existence of God, look at the fact that the Late Show with Stephen Colbert was canceled today.
Bye-bye, Colbert.
Are you serious?
Great.
Yes. Anyway, welcome. What do you want to say, Ken, man?
Oh yeah, I have a question for people who are pro-life. Okay, I'll just say the question flat out is why should I choose your life over, say, my dog's life if I had to make a choice between the two?
Your question is not clear.
Yeah, okay, what I'm trying to say is that I don't think it's clear that we value human life, quote unquote. I think it's a certain set of characteristics that we are putting
How old are
value
you?
on.
How old are you?
37.
Okay, so when you make determinations, including value determinations, do they have an ultimate objective referent, or are your determinations relativistic?
You're gonna have to elaborate.
Well, the God of Christianity, who reveals himself in creation and through human history in Jesus Christ, is the single ultimate objective referent for everything.
Well, that's what you believe. That's your
hold on a second.
value that you're putting on.
Okay, good. Here's the problem. Okay, either you're going to accept that the perfect God of creation, the God of the Bible, has revealed himself clearly in creation and through human history in Jesus Christ, or you're not going to accept that. If you do not accept that, you are instantly making a worldview counterclaim. Do you realize that?
I don't. When you say worldview counterclaim,
when you do not accept the propositional content that represents Christian theism, the Christian worldview. If you simply say, I'm trying to explain it. I'm trying to explain it to you. Can you let me finish?
Well, hurry up.
The moment you... Okay, goodbye. Another teenager trapped in an adult body. See you later. You see, this is the problem we have with most of these skeptics. They're grossly immature.
Yeah, he was just trying... I mean... Yeah, he doesn't...
See, if you do not accept the Christian worldview, right, and you take a skeptical attitude, you are instantly, whether you realize it or not, making a worldview counterclaim. And they don't want to acknowledge this because it's oops, because it's like somebody stepping and they hear a click on a landmine in a war zone. Oops. Because now... if you're claiming that the Christian worldview has not been communicated to us by God authoritatively through natural revelation and special revelation, then somebody who rejects that and says, no, the Christian worldview is not authoritative, then they are now claiming that they are speaking authoritatively, given their not Christian worldview. So how do they escape relativism? How do they escape just mouthing off a figment of their imagination as to what they think is true or not?
This is why I can't debate them, Darth, anymore on a normative level about abortion, is because every predication that they make is just arbitrary and relativistic. It's just preference laden. That's
every Christian needs to understand. See, this is what I don't like about the evidentialist. The evidentialist will hold the unbeliever's feet to the fire by saying, you don't have an objective grounding for morality. They will all do this. But then they completely abandon it, because if that's true, then the unbeliever has no objective grounding for anything else.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, I did watch one of your debates. It was with Destiny, I believe. And you were discussing like special revelation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious, like, how does Christianity specifically like bypass like the idea like you can't trust your senses? You know, because like the whole idea was like, how do you know what your senses are telling you are true?
Well, first of all, in order to even call into question as a reality or as a hypothetical that certain aspects of our sense perception are not perfect, would mean that we would have to believe and operate in the principle that there is a basic reliability of sense perception. So everybody on this planet is operating in principle in a God-given way, that we have a basic reliability of sense perception, although at times our sense perception can be flawed, but we could only recognize that our sense perception at times is flawed if we're already relying on sense perception that has a basic reliability. So let me give you an example. Suppose I go to my eye doctor and he says, Darth, read that line. And I say, okay, A-I-E-O-U. And he goes, no, that's incorrect. I say, I can see it as clear as the nose on my face. And he says, well, come closer. I get closer, and I now see that I was reading it wrong, but I'm still relying on my sense perception in order to understand that the farther away I am, my eyesight's not so good.
Wouldn't that be, correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't that be just pushing the problem back? Because how do you know like that second?
No, you're not. You're not understanding. Everybody on this planet is operating in principle that there's a basic reliability of sense perception, although nobody is claiming to have a perfection of sense perception.
So,
How would you be able to discern that there was any flaw in your sense perception if there wasn't already a basic reliability of sense perception?
You couldn't?
That's right.
Yeah.
So the issue of the perfection of our sense perception is not a defeater.
Yeah, the statement, it's the question that's asked, Owen, is ultimately self-defeating, especially for the atheist, because ultimately the atheist has no justification or grounding that their sensory apparatus or reasoning is working properly to
Yeah. In order to believe that you have a basic reliability of sense perception, you have to believe that there's a foundational parameter in the world of the regularity of nature.
well,
In the Christian worldview, we have an absolute referent in the mind, the plan of God, who actualizes and sustains whatever regularities are real. When that is rejected, then they have to explain what is it that is identifiable, defensible, that actualizes any and all regularity that escapes the failure to exist problem. Okay? So what is it that cannot fail to exist that actualizes any and all real regularity mixed with irregularity? What does that? And there's nothing. And of course, at this point, the atheist is going to go, oh, that's God of the gaps. No, it's not God of the gaps. Not at all.
I would explain it that like you cannot deny your senses. It's impossible to deny your senses, and we have competing stories. A story of how to explain the account for the accuracy of your senses. Like our story is the Bible. That's how we explain that our senses are accurate. So then, if you deny that, you're saying there's some other story that explains how your senses are accurate. Well, what's that story?
You should say model instead of story.
Yeah, well, I say I'm trying to dumb it down for people.
I know.
Yeah, one statement I will make, Owen, that I think makes sense to me is that we're not ultimately reasoning to God, we're reasoning from God. So, like, if you look at, like, basically, like, evidentialism or, like, classical apologetics, they're beginning with autonomous reasoning to try to build up to God, But our position, we're literally saying, unless you presuppose God, you can't account for anything. That would include your reasoning or your sensory apparatus, right? So,
Yeah.
When he says presuppose God, what he's talking about is acknowledging that the world overwhelmingly and rationally undeniably indicates ultimate intentional design and by God's purpose. That's what he's talking about.
yeah.
Do you think, Darth,
Would that be
should
like a fine tuning, or is that something different?
Well, it overlaps with the fine-tuning or teleological or cosmological arguments, but those arguments tend to be abductive and inference to the best explanation. We're not rejecting it. We're just recognizing that they're flawed and that they have to be represented revelational. That the design aspects, the appearance of design, either is indicative of ultimate intentional design or not. And if it's not, there's no reason to believe anything. Okay?
Darth, do you think maybe instead of story, how about narrative? That would be better.
I think that would be a better choice. Narrative or model.
Wait, facts have a narrative?
Yeah, it's not that I don't like the term story. It's like I like to avoid certain terms because of the twisted way that certain unbelievers will take and run with it. So narrative is a much better alternative, narrative or model.
And another thing, when you say, like if I were to say, we understand reality through a narrative, this is actually a scientific fact. We can appeal to science to support that. We can also demonstrate that logically, obviously, but
Yeah.
I like that we can appeal to science to support that as well.
It doesn't really matter.
So the point is this: if you see, people don't realize the many things they believe that you cannot see. People believe that they're in a world around them where there's an enormous amount of things that are regular, and that these regularities are real and not an illusion of regularity. Well, if the regularities in the world are real rather than illusion, then there must be something that is itself real, cannot fail to exist, that is actualizing and sustaining the regularities. And what's doing that is God. Okay? Now, we're not just saying this as a guess or that it's the best explanation. We're saying this because the world indicates design. Even the secular atheists admit this. But then they come along and say it's an illusion of design. And I say, good, well, that claim is an illusion of design. What is it that actualizes that regularity is real? And the answer is they have nothing. Lawrence Krauss is a really good example. When I question him, he says, we don't need God. We can explain everything through laws of nature. He has stated this over and over and over and over again. You can see lecture after lecture after lecture and debate after debate where this bonehead has made this statement over and over again. So when it was my time to talk to him, I said, Dr. Krauss, what is it that dictates all that is and cannot be? And he goes, I don't know. Why does it even matter? The reason why he got pissed is because I called his bluff. If you don't know what is ultimately foundational, that fundamentally dictates all that is and all that cannot be, then how do you know you don't need God? Okay? So you see, naturalism or atheistic naturalism is incoherent by its own standard.
Hey, Darth, I kind of want to play this clip for you. Do you have a barf bag prepared? No,
hold on a second. Okay, I just got my barf bag.
Okay. This is Jay Dyer critiquing Bonson and Mantel.
So he tries to come in and kind of interpret it for someone that's a little more lay. But like you said, there's issues with that. And this dude just keeps repeating himself over and over. I'm like 100 pages in and he said the same thing like 20 times. So do you have any other books that you would recommend for the presup that I could learn a little bit more?
Honestly, not really. Not from them. I would say watch all of our old transcendental argument and presup videos going back last 6 years, because we get into all those questions, all those questions that you're asking. You know, we actually have dealt with those for a long time. So that might be a better route than saying, "Oh, go read Bonson here," because Bonson and Van Til are not going to deal with those questions. They don't have the toolkit to deal with it.